So welcome to the, hopefully you're all here for the work quantitative workshops in HIV/AIDS research. And this is the first of the three parts, there's a separate series of the workshops go throughout that year. This is the very first part, which is, I think we call data science. I'm kind of not going to be talking about data science today, but I kind of am, depending on your interpretation. I'm going to be talking about reproducible analysis, which I consider core to anything we do, any sort of quantitative research you do. And therefore, I will say that this is part of data science. And the reason why this is the first, we're not doing R first, we're not doing anything else first, is because I think, and I convinced all my colleagues who teach these workshops, that you should start with reproducible analysis from day one. And just like you start learn to read and write the right way, everything else flows from that. And I think that starting some reproducible analysis on day one is the way to go. There's no what I tell you. I guess I can introduce myself. So I'm Josh Granick. I'm professor in this department. You're, by the way, physically in the Department of Biostatistics and Bioinformatics. I guess I'm the host of the series. All the faculty. What else? I'm planning on taking a break after about an hour, and probably a quick, like 6 break, 8 hours. If you need that break, you have minutes to find them. Just so you know, there's also water fountains in the bathroom. There are microwaves, but I think that the doors are required or not. But for future reference, I think we're going to have that, but I'm not sure. So if they don't show up, please don't play. That's not my response. And what else do you know? This is our first time in 3 years doing this in person, so I'm excited. I'm sorry, we're all kind of crammed in this classroom. If it makes you feel any better, we used to teach all our master's classes in here, and that's like 30 students, so it was even more crowded. Sadly, they get priority on the nice classrooms right downstairs from here. So yeah, we don't get the nice classroom. At least you won't be distracted by them. Well, the weather outside's not there. So the first part of today, I'm going to do a lecture, kind of explain what reproducible analysis is. Then I'm going to do an introduction to Git, which is a version control software. If you don't know what that means, hopefully by the end of today you'll understand that. I think that's it. Oh, we are recording this, so we'll have it. I think we'll share the videos, but also, I guess don't say anything you wouldn't want recorded. And I guess the other thing I'll tell you is that all the material throughout all the workshops, we are, it's all publicly available. So like the slides I'm going through in my lecture now, there's like, actually, that's one thing I'll show you. So you guys see, so here's a link to the, it's called the Git repository. We'll talk about that later. But the slides are here. And people see that, do you want me to make it bigger? And you'll have plenty of opportunities, but basically, you know, don't feel like you need to like write everything down because the materials are here and I'll want to show you. We go to on data science workshops. There are 2 links here, reproducible analysis lecture. And these are the slides, they're in like no format, but it's the same material, it's just formatted differently because we want to like click through a bunch of slides to find it. Questions before I start talking? Okay, I'm gonna start talking. Actually, the first thing I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna do something. You don't need to do this. I'm not gonna explain right now what I'm doing. I'll explain what I'm doing later. Okay. I'm going to. You'll do this, so you'll see that there's nothing up my sleeves. And I carefully figured out what I needed to do, but I'm terrible at doing this sort of thing on the fly, so I'm just copying and pasting. Okay, that's going. Okay, again, I will explain what that was later. But for now, we're going to talk about reproducible analysis. Oh, and I have another introduction. So I have a little poll here. I activated it. So you should go here, pollev.com. Josh G964, or you can even text Josh G 964 to 37607 to join. I've never tried texting, so I don't actually know how that works. I mean, I've tried texting, I've never tried texting for this. I think that I will see. And people, has anyone actually been able to?
It says it's not active yet.
And oh, no. It's fighting my button. There, good. Okay, so the question is, what do you know about reproducible research? Never heard of it, but you don't really know what it is. I know what it is, but I don't really do it. I try to work reproducibly, but I'm not perfect. Everything I do is 100% reproducible. And we've got 5, 9, 12. I'm expecting like 17 degrees. I've got 20. I'll give you like 10 more seconds. Don't worry, you're not going to be great on it. Oh, while I'm waiting for the last few people, I will mention that I got my COVID booster this morning, so if I like pass out, I'll feeling okay now, but okay, I don't know, call for help. But it's probably nothing serious. Okay, the last 4 people, I don't know what you're being shy about, but your shared responses. Okay, so 13% never heard of it, 30% heard of it, don't know what it is, try to work reproducibly, but I'm not perfect. I'm in D. Because I'm not perfect. I mean, I'd like to be in E, but I'm not perfect. In 3. Okay, so hopefully, even for those people who are in group D, you will learn something today. And if my brain freezes, like it is right now, I'm blaming it on the vaccine. And just as an aside, I kind of recently had a colleague who was involved in one of the COVID vaccine clinical trials. He was out chopping wood after he'd gotten the vaccine, and the tree that he was trying to chop down hit him and he fell over. And so one of the side effects they asked you about on the like part of the clinical trial is falling. And he was like, well, it wasn't, I got hit by a tree. He was a vaccine researcher, so what we did a lot of it doesn't matter. You don't get to decide what caused it. If you fell over, you got to report it. They apparently did not have as a side effect getting hit by a tree. But yeah, I'm blaming any problems I have today on the vaccine. Okay, so what is reproducible analysis? I tried to find a explanation of what reproducible analysis is, and I couldn't find a good one. So I came up with my own. So I will take the vaccine isn't responsible for this. I'll take responsibility. So I think of reproducible analysis as an important part of reproducible research. It requires that all the components of the analysis be archived in a way that anyone can independently repeat the analysis and arrive at exactly the same result. I want to talk briefly about who that anyone is. I should say, if you have questions, you don't have to, I will stop and ask for questions, but feel free to interrupt me with questions anytime. So who is anyone? Apparently no one there. So lab name. Has anyone here had, I'm assuming some people here, maybe I'll ask for a show of hands. Who here, is anyone here a lab researcher? Okay, so most, well, that's kind of figured. So have you anyone ever had the experience that you did an experiment or like you were an expert in a technique in the lab and someone else in the lab comes to you and says, hey, I need to do, an SDF gel, I need to do this, that, the other. You like published a paper doing that a year ago. Can you show me how to do it? Can you give me your protocol or whatever? You had that experience before? Yeah, that's pretty common. So for same thing for a reproducible analysis, you analyze the data and a lab that comes to you 6 months, a year later, they say, hey, I know you did an RNA-seq experiment last year and you analyzed it and you published it. I just got my data from the core. Can you show me how to analyze? Who else can anyone be? Collaborators, same thing, right? You collaborate with someone to figure out how to do whatever experiment is, or analyze data from whatever experiment. And of course, they want to learn how to do it themselves. So they ask you, hey, can you show us how to do this now? Of course, competitors also are gonna, if you publish a good paper, they're going to know how to reproduce, how to, do that experiment, right? Because if it's actually an interesting result, they're probably going to want to build on it just like you are. It can also be people in like completely different fields. Say I study, I don't know, vaccines in mice, and there's someone who's doing research on vaccines in raccoons. They might want to replicate what I'm doing in their own system. And from my perspective, because I'm a selfish person, the most important to anyone is you, or in my case, me, in 6 months. Because who's ever had the experience that like you do some experiment, you do some analysis, whatever, and in 6 months it turns out that you got similar data or similar, similar project, a little bit different, but similar, or collaborator comes to you who you worked with on this project and published it 3 years ago, and they say, we've got someone in the lab now who's, trying to build off that. Can you just rerun that analysis to change this other thing or generate this, something like that? And you in 6 months, like, yeah, let me look at my notes. If you do things reproducibly, really reproducibly, you're not like, yeah, let me look at my notes. I mean, it's not like it's like snap of the finger and got it, right? But when I do things reproducibly, it takes me, 10, 15 minutes. I gotta remember where I put the code, but it's all there and I should be able to rerun it. Might take, depending on how long the original analysis took to run, might be computation intensive, might take 2 hours, might take a day, might take a week, but I don't have to reconstruct it. It's already there. That the like epitome for me of reproducible analysis is that basically you maybe takes you a little bit of time to find the code, right? If you're organized, not that much, it can only take 5 minutes. You download it, you download the data again, and you start it running, and it's maybe half an hour of your time to repeat the analysis. If you want to build on it, you want to do something new, fine, that might take a lot of time, but repeat what you've done before, it should be automatic, right? And so I found pretty much everything I can tell you today is stuff that I've learned that through a lot of pain and suffering and blood, sweat, and tears, that it's really nice to do things reproducibly so that the next time you have to do it, and there's always next. The next time you have to do it, it's easy. Or you can build on, it's not totally, if you're taking your analysis and you're applying it to new data set, there's going to be some work, but you're not starting from zero. You're starting from the end of where you left off. So hopefully I will convince you that this is worth doing. And hopefully I'll show you some ways we can do things. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm not talking about here. So I'm not talking at all about reproducibility in the wet lab. That is an important area. There are other people who are experts in that. I'm not. There are lots of details I'm not going to talk about. I think that really this could be a whole semester course, and we're only here for 3 hours. And I'm going to tell you again how I do things. It's not the only way to do it. It works for me. I think it works for other people, but I'll give you some pointers to other suggestions that other people have made for others. Okay, and I do want to say that my colleagues sometimes call this lecture the rant, and I also lovingly refer to it as the rant. I don't want to give you the impression that I told you I'm in like group T there. I try to do things reproducibly. I'm not perfect. I don't want you to leave here today with the impression that if you're not doing everything I tell you about today, by tomorrow, that you're like doing it wrong, you should give up. Like I said, the sort of my approach to reproducible analysis took years of pain and suffering, and was very incremental. So if you leave here today and you say, I want to do that one thing, I think that that's going to be really helpful for me. Like, next time I analyze data, great. Like you're better off than you were before. So you shouldn't leave here with letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Anything you do to make your analysis more reproducible is going to help you. It's going to help other people that you work with whenever you publish. And then the last sort of, before I actually get into the details, I'll say that reproducible analysis it's kind of like eating your vegetables. And I say this as someone who likes vegetables. But if there's like a Reese's pack of Reese's peanut butter cups sitting out, and like I'm hungry, It's like snack time. Been lecturing for a couple of hours. I'm kind of tired. Like sometimes those Reese's peanut butter cups look good. And sometimes they eat them, right? But they're still junk food, right? It's not good for you. And reproducible analysis is like that. And sometimes I'll say to myself, I'm just gonna do the thing really quick. I don't need to go to the trouble of like setting up a Git repo and stuff like that. And I always it's never really quick, or even if it is really quick, I always it's always, a week, a month, a year later, I'm like, how can I do that? So there is a cost in terms of time and effort of doing things reproducibly, but just like eating your vegetables, it pays off in the long term, right? If you ate nothing but it's okay to eat the junk food, but I'm not here for dietary advice, by the way. Just like it's okay, have cake, whatever, right? But if that's all you eat, then you're not going to be healthy in the long term. And if you, ultimately, if you take a little bit of extra time, again, to do things reproducibly, then there's some long-term benefits. And I see nothing but I'm repeatedly happy that I've done taking that extra time. Okay, so with all those qualifications, I will actually tell you how I think of reproducible analysis. So I think of reproducible analysis as having three main pillars. The raw data, the computing environment, and the analysis process. And my executive summary of everything else in reproducible analysis is for each of these components, you need to archive those components in a way that's appropriate for that component. And then you've done it reproducibly. And then everything else I'm going to talk about today is just the details of how to actually do that. So here are the details. Questions before I get into them? So raw data. This is my cycle of how I normally think of raw data, and it's going to vary a little bit, but basically, for me, it's always starting with downloading data from somewhere, right? I'm getting data from the Duke sequencing core or some other. I should say that almost all the data that I work with is sequence data, so I'm a little bit biased in that way. But yeah, I'm downloading data from Duke sequencing core or from some company that's done the sequencing, or some other sequencing core at some other university. Then the next thing that I worry about is the provenance. So like provenance for the for people don't know, it's sort of I think that the term comes from the art world where let's say you had a nice Picasso hanging on the wall, and the department's not rich, so it turns out we bought that for $10, but it's authentic, right? When you go to a museum and you see a painting on the wall, the reason why it's worth $1 million, not $10, is because it was painted by Picasso and not like Joe Smith. And so the process of knowing where that painting came from, being able to say yeah, this is actually a painting, we can trace it from the artist's paintbrush to that actual object on the wall. That object on the wall, that's provenance. So the same thing with data, well, kind of the same thing with data, right? The data isn't valuable because a famous artist made it. It's valuable because we know that we know where it came from. So for me, for data, the provenance is being able to say oh, actually, this is the data as it came off the sequencing machine, right? It hasn't been I'm not missing any hits of data. It hasn't been altered in any way. Some people worry a lot about, data fraud, like people manipulating data. I trust myself not to intentionally manipulate data. I don't trust myself to not do something stupid like, what I thought I downloaded the whole file, but turns out that I missed it. Or oops, I accidentally deleted the file. Or oops, I accidentally edited the data file instead of some other file. So I'm concerned about protecting myself against you being stupid. You can use basically these sort of similar methods to protect against falsification of data. You gotta be a little bit more careful, but same idea. And I'm going to go through at least the provenance and the next step in a little bit more detail like that. And then the last part that I think of the sort of life cycle of handling of raw data is protection. Keep it, again, safe from me, also like safe from other people, especially people who are new to using the system and again, might accidentally delete the data. Again, I'm not too worried about people doing things on purpose. I'm worried a little bit about people doing things because they thought that, oh, well, that was a copy that I did, right? That wasn't the original only copy of the data, right? And so, I'll just say for provenance, we have mechanisms for basically generating what's called a checksum or a fingerprint of the data, so that we would, it's a small string of letters and numbers that we can then run the data through a program and confirm that it still matches that fingerprint. And then for protection, we can do things like archiving the data someplace safe and setting access permissions on the file so that it can't be overwritten or altered, at least not with jumping through something. If you're desperately committed to making a disaster, no computer system is really gonna protect you from yourself. But if you're committed to doing things, protecting yourself from your own mild stupidity, then the computers does a decent job of it. Okay, switch starts to move up. Yeah, maybe it didn't. Okay. So I'm just gonna do a quick demo. That's why I left that open. Oh, well. So I'm just going to quickly demonstrate to you these the provenance and what I call it, protection. This is the system that I'll be showing you a little bit more later. Again, I'm going to be walking through some very simple code that is available to you. You do not need to, well, I'm not even showing you how to do this. So you don't need to worry about doing it right now. But if you're interested, you can do it later. So this is a demonstration. That's big enough to see, right? Pick it up. So what this is just like some toy examples. I'm making two files, one called data1.csv and one called data2.csv. I will show you what they are in a second. Here. So those are the two files. You can see they're pretty simple. Data1.csv it's a comma separated value, so it's one column, then commas. So it's got the header, the values, and then it's got the values 1, 2, 3, 4. Data2.csv also the column name is value, and it's got 5, 6, 7, 8. They're pretty simple. Okay, with that, right? Just two little files that are going to allow us to demonstrate things. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to demonstrate is making checksums. I'm using a program called MD5 sum. It's a mathematical algorithm for taking any size file and calculating these, like I said, the string of letters and numbers that is not exactly unique for the file, but it's close enough for our purposes, right? So people have demonstrated that it would be very hard to take this checksum and make another file that had the same checksum, but actually different contents, right? So it's looking at the contents of the file. It's not, I could actually type out again these same values, and actually that's what this example does. And it'll generate the same checksum. You can see that the checksums are different between the two files. Different files. Everyone okay with that? Okay, so we can use this little bit of, and I will also point out that the checksums are actually longer than the files themselves. That doesn't matter. The file can be have one character or 10 billion characters. We can still generate checksum, and at least for an MD5 checksum, it'll be that length, whatever it is. I can't remember, 32 characters. Okay. So that I just ran MD5 sum, and it's spitting the output out there. I'm going to save it to this file called mydata.md5.txt, and then I'm going to run MD5 sum. So here I'm calculating the checksums on this file. Don't worry about the details of how it's working. I don't want you to worry about that. This next line here is saying, okay, I've got a checksum file, a fingerprint file. And what I want you to do is I want you to look at that fingerprint file. I want you to check and see if the files that are represented by those fingerprints match the fingerprint still, right? So this is saying hey, have we deleted anything from the file or missing anything from the file? Have we changed anything from the file? And it's telling me for data1.csv, okay, which is its way of saying, yeah, the data1.csv, it matches the fingerprint. Data2.csv, yeah, it matches the fingerprint. So we're happy, right? We like the data matches our expectation. Let's just about that. So now, of course, we have to make problems. So I am going to change the value of data2.csv. So remember, 4 is 5, 6, 7, 8. And change that 7 to a 3. And this is, we're actually looking at the file itself. So now I'm going to run that MD5 sum-c again. And you can see that data1.csv is still okay. Data2.csv, it failed. And now it's saying in big red letters, the checksum didn't match. This is exactly what I'm looking for, right? And I just changed one character, right? Doesn't matter if I change one character or if I change 1 million characters, it's not going to match, right? Or if I delete half the file, if I delete one character from the file, whatever I do, the whole point of these checksumming algorithms is that I have to try really hard, maybe I need 1 million computers to be able to change that file in a way that the checksum matches and looks actually different. Let's just about that. Yep.
So simply put, checksum is just a quick assay of seeing if there's any modification happens onto the original data file, right?
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
What is the raw data that can change itself? Is it possible?
Say that again.
The raw data file is constantly changing?
Well, so can you give an example?
I can't, sorry, but
So if the contents of the file are changing, then that if you generated checksum, if you generated fingerprints, and then you run the checksumming program again, you'll get a different fingerprint. From my perspective, at least the type of data that I work with, like, again, sequence data, like, you do the sequencing once, you get the file from, or the files from wherever, you know, or whatever. Those files shouldn't change, right? That's the sequence. Now, I might want to do computations on those files and like, I'm not going to say edit the file, right? I might want to modify the file, but I'm never going to actually modify directly the raw file. I'm going to modify a copy. Right, that again, this is my perspective of how, like, my perspective is raw data is, you know, you don't touch it, right? It's like the, you know, again, going to the museum, like, you don't, like, the paintings on the wall look really nice, but in most cases, you're not allowed to touch the painting, right? Look at them, and that's what we do, like, we look at the data, but we don't touch the data. Okay. And then again, this is just to kind of like show you what's possible and to show you how within a Unix environment, which is what we're going to be using throughout these workshops, how you can make files so that it's at least difficult, that you kind of protect yourself from yourself, so that you don't actually, you have a less likelihood of deleting or changing the file, right? So this is the fingerprinting or checksumming. It doesn't protect you from changing the files or deleting them. It just lets you know whether they're changed. You might think, well, that's not a big deal, right? But it's a big deal when you have like when your files are, when you have like 100 files of sequence data, and each of those files are 2 gigs or something like that, or 10 gigs, right? You're not going to notice if like one base somewhere is changed, or even if like, you know, 1% of the file actually got deleted. You're not going to notice that. Like, I would not. Maybe other people are more observant, but I wouldn't notice that, right? Unless I have a program that can check. So the next thing I'm going to show you is just how you can go about protecting yourself from yourself, and actually preventing changes. So I'm going to introduce you to a concept of permissions. You've probably heard of these, seen these in some cases, even if you have a Unix environment before. So within a Unix environment, permissions come in, there's sort of 3 sets of permissions. There's the permission that the person who owns the file has. The permissions for people in the same group, which we're not going to worry about what the group is right now. And then permissions for like basically everyone on the whole who has access to that computer system, right? So this is these are these sort of triplicates of letters, that are like kind of characters. So these first 3 things are for the user, these are for the group, and this is for everyone. So the R means you can read it, meaning you can look at the file, right? So you know, that you can change who can read it. You know, if you have like secret information, you can say like, oh well, no one else in the group or on the computer system can read the file, right? And then secret. The next, the W says that the person who owns the file, which happens to me, can write that file. So writing is deleting or changing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this program chmod, and I'm going to say, okay, let's get rid of, make it so that no one can write it. So remember here, there were write permissions. People over there see what I'm looking here. I probably should ask that, right? 30 minutes ago. The vaccines, I'm too lazy. Well, I'll walk with that. So here there's the W there. Now that W is gone, right? So now I myself cannot write to this file or delete it. We'll just test that really quick. So I'm going to run this. If this works, if we change the contents of that data to file to say this is not the data you're looking for. It is, however, telling me, you do not have permission to change that file, right? Even though I own it, I can't change it because I took away my permissions. Good idea. And here I'm gonna remember I changed the 7 to a 3 before. We did. So if I try to do it again, it's gonna say, no, you can't change it, right? So I couldn't delete it and I couldn't overwrite the file, I can't change it. And I also can't delete the file or the directory, right? So again, this is not like totally foolproof. Of course, I can do this here. I'm giving myself write permissions again, and now I've actually deleted the file without any problem. But it does, it makes you go at least go that extra step. About that. Okay. So it's totally clear. Good. Screen. Okay, so I'm just going to skip over all this stuff. I already went through it. In real life. Okay. So the last thing I'll point out, which I didn't show you there, is it's a good idea when you get raw data to archive it somewhere as soon as you can. Because you have a local copy on your computer or on an external hard drive. I can't tell you how many people, I'm sure that some people in this room, I'm not making fun of you, but it's very common for people to archive their data on external hard drive. So the bad thing about external hard drive is that hard drives, if it's actually a hard drive that it spins, they're mechanical devices, and they like spinning. And if you stop them from spinning, if you take a hard drive with important data on it, and you put it on a shelf, and then like 2 years later, you're like, oh, I need that data again. You pull off the shelf. Often those hard drives are dead. And it doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot. And so an external hard drive sitting on a shelf somewhere is not a good archive. I mean, it's better than nothing, but it's not a very good archive. I'm going to point you later to some resources. Don't want to now. Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about archiving, but yeah, again, hard drive on a shelf, better than nothing, but not perfect. Okay, so and what ends up happening when those hard drives are on the shelf and the data on it actually is important is that you can't pay companies a lot of money to like get the hard drive working, and sometimes they can't. But it's often a lot cheaper just to archive the data and have paper away. So one way that you can archive data, and again, my work tends to be with sequence data, so that's what I think about. One way you can archive data is through the NCBI, which I can't remember what it stands for, National Center for Biotechnology Informatics, maybe. It's part of the National Library of Medicine, which is part of the National Institutes of Health. I'm sure everyone's heard of NCBI, right? Lab, so they have several databases for different types of data. For sequence data, there is GEO, which is the gene expression omnibus. It is for gene expression data like microarrays, which maybe none of you have ever heard of. I don't really use them that much anymore, but RNA-seq, for some odd reason, ChIP-seq data, even though it's not expression data. I've never understood that, but that's what it is. Your question?
Yeah, should we have to pay for it?
So you do not have to pay to archive data in GEO or SRA. They are free. Well, they're free for someone has to pay for it, but I mean, if you pay taxes, then yes, you are paying. But you don't have to pay extra. And then basically for any sequence data that's not gene expression data or ChIP-seq data, it goes in SRA, which is the sequence read archive. And if you have this data, you can upload it today. You don't have to pay anything except for time and uploading the data. I will say that on the minus side, uploading data to these databases is kind of a hassle. I always dread it whenever I have to do it. Because I usually plan on, and I've done it before many times, I usually plan on taking at least, a full day, like 8 hours of my time. Because you have to collect a bunch of information. Because they don't want just the raw sequence data, they want the metadata. So like, what is, like, if you say sample one, this is the sequence from sample one, like sample one, maybe it means something to you today. But in like a year, sample one doesn't mean anything to you. You're like, which was sample one? And it for sure doesn't mean anything to anyone else. Yeah.
So if you upload your data to this, is it private or does it become public?
Good question. Yes. So Geo and SRA, you can upload your data. So the point of Geo and SRA is actually as a public resource. So most journals today will require, if you publish something using sequence data, you have to make the data publicly available. And so this is the standard way. Okay. This is the standard way to archive sequence data, and like then you can include in your paper and say the data is available at Geo or SRA or whatever, one of those Geo or SRA. And here's the accession number. So for those purposes, the data ultimately has to be public. You can upload your data today, and you can set an embargo for it. And you can set the embargo for 5 years from today. And the really nice thing is, in theory, if you really need to archive it for longer. So what's today? September 29th, what are we, 2022? So if I'll upload data today, that sends some shivers through my spine, taking time to do it, but then I can embargo the data until September 29th or maybe 28th, I can't remember, 2027. Then if I did upload the data today, I could log in, I don't know, November 19th of this year, and I can update the embargo to November 19th, 2027. Right? So you can actually push the embargo date as long as you keep on logging in, every 4 years and 11 months and 29 days or whatever. You can actually keep pushing the embargo date. And as far as I know, there's no limit to that. I've been able to update things of it. I will say that if like in 5 years you haven't published the data, then like maybe you're never going to publish it. But you do have that option. And so the reason I should clarify, the reason it is really annoying to upload data because you need to add the metadata, but that's actually like an important resource. So it's not like it's pure pain for no reason. The point is, it's just like it's kind of a pain to keep a lab notebook, but without the lab notebook, you don't know what any. And so actually I keep telling people they should do it, and everything else I actually say I actually do myself. I'm not actually gotten around to doing this, but I keep telling people you should, like, when you get your data, you should upload it to SRA. Assuming you have a sequence that you should upload it to SRA or Geo right away, because like the day you get the data, that metadata is precious in your mind. Like what all the samples were, like all the, sample one was, wild type mouse that was treated with like this antibiotic, and the samples collected on like right. Whereas in 2 years, Yeah, I did the lab notebook. I'll give you an example, actually, like horror story. I've been involved in projects where I wasn't involved at the beginning, so I'm gonna, again, it's the code that it's not my fault. I wasn't involved in that project at the beginning, but of course, it comes time to publish the paper. I've done some analysis on it, and it's time to upload the data. And so one of the things that you need to fill out from the metadata is what type of sequencer this is. They say, well, it's not a data. No, they want to actually know the machine. I mean, I guess if you put the wrong thing, they're not gonna, no one's gonna come knocking on your door and arrest you, but I'm a perfectionist. I mean, that's kind of part of why I do this sort of work. And so I want to know. So it turns out that at least for Illumina data, there is a way the raw sequence data has the serial number of the sequencer in it. And you can, at least I have in the past, email tech support Illumina and say, hey, can you tell me I have the serial number, can you tell me what type of sequencer it is? And that can work for me, that I've been able to get the model number. You don't really want to do that. That's kind of embarrassing. Or at least I'm embarrassed. So yeah, so like upload your data and it's free backup. Well, there's a copy up there. NC guy is responsible for it, not you. And it's not just sitting on an external hard drive. Any other questions? So there are alternatives to NCBI, kind of. The European Nucleotide Archive and the DNA database of Japan, I think kind of because they're all part of this international collaboration. So actually, if you upload data to one of them, it gets copied to the other ones. So it's kind of an alternative, kind of not. I will say that they do have different interfaces, but there was one point in time where the ENA interface for uploading data was much less annoying than TBIs. So for a project that was not NIH funded, I uploaded the data to ENA. I think that I'm a little unclear on the details. I think if it's funded by the federal government, they're supposed to actually upload the data directly to NCBI. I don't know if, because it will ultimately end up in the NCBI databases anyway. I don't know if you get in trouble for uploading it to ENA, but I just started to look on my for other data types, I can't necessarily tell you where to put it. The other sort of collection of databases that I know of is for immunological data. There's something called Import that's also run by, I think it's run by NCBI. Anyway, it's part of NIH. And so they actually accept several different types, like cytometry data. I think they take ELISA data. So basically, if it's sort of like a common immunology related experiment. Okay, so questions about data before I move on. No, at least for fun, okay, so let's talk about reproducible computing environments. So this is a little bit complicated and a little bit hard to explain. I'll try to explain it, but I probably won't do a very good job. My approach to reproducible computing is what's called continuity. So has anyone ever had, I feel like this experience is less common these days, but has anyone ever had the experience that you usually use a Mac and you make a presentation in PowerPoint, and you go to give your presentation on a PC and things are messed up? You must have that experience. Okay, a few people. Gotten better. Or like vice versa, or like you're collaborating on a manuscript and writes on your Mac and you send someone a PC and get messed up. So those of you who are lucky enough to not have had that experience, it could be a big problem. Again, it's gotten better. So we have the same problem in bioinformatics and, you know, other computational biology sort of field where, you know, it's not necessarily MAP-50C, but it's different versions of analysis software for programming languages, and, you know, it runs fine on one version and totally crashes on another version, or gives you a different result on another version. And that's bad, right? Because I told you at the beginning that the whole goal was I should be able to run my analysis, archive the different components, and me or my lab mate or my competitor should be able to take that and run it and get the same results, right? So if it's going to crash on a different version, or it's going to give a different result on a different version, it's not reproducible. And so, and part of making our analysis reproducible is to actually have a reproducible computer set. And so, so again, there are different ways to do this, but what I found the best way is containerization and actually, I'll up to it. And so the way I like to explain containerization is kind of like, if you've heard of a virtual machine, it's kind of like a virtual machine. If you haven't heard of a virtual machine, I'll give you my example. So imagine I have research project A, and I have my laptop for research project A. Whenever I'm working on research project A, I'm working on that laptop. I have like all the software I need installed on that laptop. And then like after lunch, I'm gonna work on a research project. So I take my research project A laptop, I shut it, I put it on the shelf. I pull down my research project B laptop, and I put it in front of me, and I got all the software I need for research project B. It's mostly the same software, but like for research project B, I've got, you know, version 1.5 of the software, and for research project A, I have version 1.2 of the software because research project A started before research project B. And I don't know, maybe both versions would work fine, but I didn't even have to bother to check because I do all my analysis for research project B on the B laptop, and I do all my analysis for project A on the A laptop. So I don't have to worry about if there are differences between the versions. And then, you know, if I got research project C, I take my other laptop, put it on the shelf, pull out my project C laptop, open it, and I got all the software that I need for research project C. But even better than that is I've got, you know, my colleague calls me up, or my lab mate, and says like, hey, I know for research project B, you're analyzing their NAC data again. Can you show me how to do it? And I say, oh yeah, you know, here's my code. And here, let me clone my research project B laptop. So you can, you know, I published, or we should say research project, I don't know, 0, right? Because it's something that's already published. So like, you know, I published it. Here's the code. Here's the laptop that I used to do it. Or like, you can have the laptop because I need it. But like, I can put it in my replicator and make you an exact copy of the laptop. Here's the laptop. The data is, you know, there's the data on SRA, and here's the code there. You should be able to reproduce it. So that's the idea of containerization, is that I have, you know, I don't have a laptop for every project, but I basically have a software version of a separate laptop for every project, and I can take that software version of the computing environment, I can put on a shelf, and I can switch to another environment, and I can give that computing environment that anyone who wants it, you know, it just takes a few gigs of storage maybe, so I can just put it up on the website. I can say, when I publish something, I can say, here's the data, here's the code, and here's the computing environment. Download it all, and you should be able to reproduce my work, because we have exactly the same environment and the same information that I have. So that's the idea behind immunization. That kind of makes sense. Questions about that? I'm going into a little bit more detail about the practicality. That's the idea. And so it has the ability to version, right? I can have version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4 of my computing environment. And so, like, for example, I can have different versions for different projects, or, you know, if I need to update something on my project, all the time, you know, I need to install new software. Oh, but I installed something, I updated it, and now when I try and run this analysis again, it's not working. Well, I can go back to the old version and check, oh, did I break something in the computing environment, or did I like change something in my code? Right? And if I can run it in the old version of the computing environment, well, then I must have changed something in the code version. This containerization system allows you to run, it depends on which containerization system we're talking about, but some of them allow you to run these same computing environments on a Linux computer, on a Mac, on Windows. So that's nice. Again, like, you can share it, you can basically publish it on a website. And because you can move it between different types of computers, you can often, and for both the examples I'll talk about, is scalable, right? So I can run it on my laptop, and I can run it on a server, and I can run it on a cluster. And I'll finish this slide. So I'll just talk a little bit briefly about 2 containerization systems. There are others, but the 2 that I interact with, and that I think probably anyone else in research who's going to want to do some containerization and want to interact with are called Docker and Singularity. And I will keep my word, and I won't talk about them right now. We'll take a 5-minute break. So I had 2 of 4, so let's come back at 2:10. Anyone who wants me to show you where the bathrooms are, I can do that now. Okay, I guess that time, so I should on their off. I'll show. Does anyone need to know? Okay, you need bathrooms or a water fountain or water fountain? Yeah, question.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I'll lead you there. If you want coffee, I think.
The only option is to go down to the 3rd floor and sell jellies there, although
They might not be, you know, time they close 2:30. Okay, so you got like 25 minutes to get coffee or snack. You can get how reasons peanut butter and I got to eat some stuff. Okay, so I'm leaving it like the bathroom for water.
Thank you for telling me. I'm reminded of that. Yeah. Oh, wait, and I probably take that.
I think I'm over.
Yeah, no, it's because like I had it. That's what I was wondering. It's funny because she like started making it, but I'm very feeling bad. She's like, I don't know if you're so sorry. Think of it going water. Now, but they're gonna do like, is it human or uniform? Right now, they're doing human and. But it's hard to find a little bit. So there's human and I think. And then we're getting something partly. And so far, the data, like a lot learning the data. And it's even helping even getting it. I also know. So
why?
Okay, so.
Yeah, no, I was like,
Okay, so you already know. Yeah, you get that and then at least. No, you're sequencing or whatever.
yeah, because we're gonna blend better.
Okay.
And then, so, you know. I mean, we pretty much know things are in there, different things. And then we're also gonna like. Yeah, so like, yeah. So how did I do it?
I know those were inhibitors of something.
101.
Oh, okay.
Because that can happen.
Definitely.
We will are.
Yeah, okay.
For here and for, but I also think it might work for scale.
No.
But then like Alex, she already knew this. So like. Yeah. I literally looked at her and I was like, I sequencing obviously.
So is it in?
I'll do my first, sequencing, the expression, first I'll do like PRPV4 and PUV signals, and test it without loading and see the expression, and then I'm gonna do PCR, like filtering, and then I'm on the like, I don't know, CRISPR and Lindsay, but and then I talked about it right now. But when is this break happening? Okay, like this is just kind of like one thing for something, and very people there, and then they do.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like the same thing. I don't think there is one. This kind of now.
So what genes?
Yeah, I'm kind of.
We're gonna look at. I mentioned collagen one under my knee. I didn't think there. He was just talking about the expression panel. I haven't like had a while. I also brought up like looking at like that.
Okay.
But then I had a soundbite about the slide. Oh, I know.
You want those done right, you know.
She like, kind of like,
So
her last friend has the enemy, she like recommended too, because like,
Mm-hmm.
I was on the line with it.
Oh,
So that I have to put it together, because she's like, it's in my head, and it was like, yeah. So there's a program. So,
which
that's why like, we can do that, you know, like, this is long, but. Kind of like, taking different books. Like,
I think it's not really self-control. So yeah,
and then,
but all three different people in one room. This little laptop. And
Yeah.
Of like what I was doing, I have not like totally different. Oh my God, we were playing the same game a year and a half later. On my desktop.
I just. So like, there's not really. But, I mean, it was, like the ideas for what I gotta do the study, and then I can.
I think it actually like
That would probably be what I wrote.
when I play this stuff.
Well, this is probably,
I hope you're not.
so it'll be like, the things I identified from the other parties. I wanna look at.
I haven't, not.
We just eye on. Really look at It's not really. To go through wait, this is
The program before. Okay. That was kind of fun. So I did discover that, I was reminded that there are active attorneys, down the hall. And maybe at the next break, if anyone wants to do anything, sorry. Like a bunch of people must be on for coffee.
Yeah, and then the lines are probably long at that point.
I can understand, I'm feeling, vaccine is kind of like, I'm feeling tired right now. Or
You
maybe
say you
it's-
did the bivalent today?
Yeah,
Oh, gotcha.
there was the option to get the flu vaccine also, I was like, I don't know, the last time I got the COVID vaccine, I kind of felt crummy, and usually the flu vaccine makes me feel crummy, so. I don't think I like that combination.
I mean, obviously, everybody has a different reaction,
Yeah.
but like, I definitely did both and I was not feeling good the next day, so.
Yeah, someone told me that that like, I mean, it was like secondhand, I think it was my wife that. That they had a colleague who got both and they like were sent to the next stage going out. But like, yeah, I can space those a little bit. I'm probably okay. Can people hear me still okay?
Yeah.
I'll take a slow start for people who are, like to get their caffeine thing. Was there a rush? Okay, maybe I'll give like one more minute. I'll field questions. Actually, I'll take the opportunity to introduce Francis, who's sitting here in the back, who's our TA, and he's going to be helping out. Once we do that, on stuff. And so, oh, and I think I said there are vending machines, there is like hot water and cup and there's a coffee pot. I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't know how to make coffee. You're welcome to make your own coffee as long as you clean up after yourself and you don't burn it on yourself. Actually, now I'm gonna set the standard lower, you don't start any fires. Right? 'Cause I'm gonna get in trouble if there are any fires. Before the pandemic, we used to have like fresh coffee all the time, but and now like. Well, but I think they're tea bags that are all. So if anyone wants to see where that is, again, we can do a little field trip there. The next break. I'm gonna say we'll do like 45 minutes and then take a break at 3. I mean, we will not last out for them. Okay. That's those people who need caffeine, they're gonna have to watch the video. Okay, so Singularity and Docker. I'm assuming that almost nobody knows anything about either of these. So I'll give you a little bit of history, maybe by the caffeine people at a time. So Docker has been around longer. It's actually was developed as a commercial system for like, you've heard of companies probably like Amazon, like Netflix, stuff like that. So they all use all their computing is, or most of their computing is actually done in containerized environments, because there are some like IT benefits of doing that. And so Docker was actually developed targeted at like these, big companies. Singularity is the product of people who want to do research computing, like and why do you think research computing like that type of environment is actually developed at Lawrence Berkeley Brown, because researchers kept on coming to the like IT professionals and saying, hey, I've like been using Docker on my laptop, and now I need like to run something on the cluster. Is it okay if I run my Docker container on the cluster? And the IT professional kind of just stared it down and said no. Because allowing like a regular user to run a Docker container on a cluster is kind of like giving them the keys to the building, and like no self-respecting IT professional would do that. And so the IT people at Lawrence Berkeley Lab said, well, let's see if we can make something that does kind of what Docker does, but we can actually trust regular and normal student users to use it. So that's what Singularity is, and so it's really developed for research computing. So for example, on the two clusters on campus, just that is anyone here not a Duke affiliate? Okay. So this is technically independent. It's like a little bit of weirdness. Technically be open to board institutions. So like the two clusters that I interact with on campus, do compute cluster, which is actually what we'll use in our computing later today and for the rest of the workshop. What used to be called Hardoc, but now HPC and different. They both allow Singularity computers to be run on the clusters, but there's no way you convince them to let you use a Docker container. There's some benefits to Singularity, some benefits to Docker. For research computing, I think that Singularity is usually better. This is my sort of slightly opinionated view, but again, unless it's your computer, no one's going to let you run Docker on their computer. Unless you run it. Whereas Singularity, again, it's pretty common. Yeah, well, if people have questions about this, I can go into detail, but they do, for most purposes, they're sort of similar. And again, they give you this benefit of letting you take this computing environment and share it with other people, and again, have it for yourself in 6 months to a year or whatever. I'll say when in my year, the other. Okay, so if you remember, back at the beginning, I started writing something. I told you I'd tell you about it more later, and so now is later. So what I did is I started a program that downloaded here. But I logged onto the new compute cluster here, and I started a program which downloaded data, the computing environment. So it's actually that's what I was going to tell you. So one nice thing about Singularity is that you can make Singularity containers, Singularity computing environments, and of course you can run them in Singularity. But you can also run Docker computing environments. So that's kind of a benefit, right? So you can actually, it gives you a little bit of flexibility. So actually, this program that I ran was a short short shell script. You don't need to go back and get it out, but basically, it downloaded the data. It downloaded the computing environment, which was actually a Docker container, but I was able to run it in Singularity. And it downloaded the code that I wrote for analyzing some data, and it ran the full analysis. And so it was one command that I had to run to then do all that stuff. And so I think of this as the sort of my ideal for reproducible example, for reproducible computing, and I will show you now the results of that. And again, I'm not showing you this to say like you could be doing this every time you do any sort of analysis. I'm showing you to show you kind of what's possible. And I don't always do this. So this is the results, the one that's kind of interesting working. So this is doing this is working with microbiome data and actually publicly available crime data. So this is some of the plots that were generated. These are health diversity plots. If that can say anything to anyone, great. If not, you can just say, oh, that's a pretty plot you need. And of course, like generating all the scripts and stuff to do this analysis takes a lot of time. But it only has to be done once, and now I can rerun it. It takes, running on the cluster, it takes like about 20 minutes to actually download everything and run it. But it only took, you saw it, 30 seconds of my time. So that's just an example, just a little bit of a pretty example of what you can do when you use reproducibly. And I would say all of those components were important, and really without any of them, it wouldn't be possible. If we didn't have the data archived in a particular way, if we didn't have the analysis was archived in a particular way, and we didn't have the computing environment archived in a particular way, it wouldn't be so easy. Right? Okay. So questions about the computing, reproducible computing environment. Okay. So the last component is the analysis process. And the sort of detailed, the high level details that I think of when I think of the analysis process is to script everything, share everything, and use version control. So what do I mean by that? There are lots of different ways to script analysis. So you've probably heard of R, Python, those programming languages. You might have heard of shell scripts, another type of programming language. R Markdown, which we use a lot of throughout the workshops. Makefile, which you've probably never heard of, but that's okay. Jupyter, you might have heard of. So there are a bunch of different tools and environments for writing, basically the sort of programming approach, writing analyses. One thing that I'll say is generally not a reproducible way to do analysis is Excel. If you look in the notes, this link here, not going to go into details, but the link here is to an article about some very famous economists who made a mistake in they actually shifted some rows or columns or something like that in an analysis they did in Excel. That they claim, oh well, it's kind of like meta, it's like percentage point difference. Like people who disagree with them with their analysis say like, oh, actually, that it made a huge difference. Decisions were made by countries around the world in the last economic crisis in 2008, based on these famous economist publications that had some errors because of Excel. again, like you could find different economists who say like, ah, it's no big deal, and some other economists who say like, oh, well, that was a huge mistake and it was a disaster. The point is that simple mistakes in Excel that can be tricky to catch, if you can catch them all, can actually, I don't do any work that has any, consequences that major, that governments around the world, their economies based on, but maybe you can. And Excel is problematic because it's easy to make those sorts of mistakes. I mean, so the biggest problem with Excel is that it's really hard to move it reproducibly, and you tend to mix data and code. When you do, plus this cell minus that, well, that's code, right? It's not the R, it's not Python, it's not C, but it's code. And it is problematic for reproducibility in that perspective. I'm not going to say never use Excel, because I can use Excel for things, but I don't use it for data. Like making a budget for a grant. Okay. So share everything. I talked about this a little bit already. So of course, if you do an analysis and you want to make it reproducible so that other people can reproduce it, you gotta share the scripts, the actual code that you write. But that's not enough. You actually need to share metadata. So like, for example, parameter settings for, okay, well, I ran this program and I used these sort of parameter settings for the program. So that's, you might consider that metadata. There are other types of metadata that I already mentioned, like, sample one is wild type mouse that was treated with antibiotic, and we collected the stool samples on the so one is wild type mouse one, whatever. People probably know what's that. You really need to have some sort of documentation, right? If you just give someone code and say, yeah, just run this. That doesn't mean anything, especially if it's, oh, well, you need to run this script and then 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 this script, but you don't tell them. That's going to be hard for them to use. So you need to tell them, like, okay, how do I actually produce it? If you have an example like the one I showed you, where you actually have a script that like runs everything, then you say like, oh yeah, just run the script. Okay, and then at least it'll reproduce it. It might not give them a lot of detail, but then they have a working example. And I will just say as an aside, the last thing I have is manuscript. So I mentioned R Markdown. So R Markdown, again, you're gonna learn about it. I guess starting next week. It is a mechanism for writing our code and text, and you can actually write manuscripts in R Markdown and actually can have the analysis mixed in with the text, and even do nice things like we have in a paper that like we found that 3 mice had significantly different whatever something else. So that number 3, right, that came out of the analysis. But let's say like you realize, oh, I made a mistake here, and that number 3 changes to 5 mice. You got to remember to go back and change that number 3 times. But if you do things, if you write your manuscript in a reproducible way, using our marketing, you can actually automatically generate that number. So you can have code in your text that plugs in a does the calculation and plugs in the result. I really like doing that. It ends up being kind of tricky because often, at least in my experience, people that I collaborate on that, work in a Word document. So at some point you're going to shift over into that from Word. You can actually write a manuscript in R Markdown and actually generate a Word document from it. So at least kind of get you partway there from the reproducible version to like the Word version. Again, you don't have to do all these things. kind of, I want to tell you what's possible and, you know, something to you know, build towards. Okay, so I have another poll. Here, oh, actually, don't, sorry. Yeah, get that. No, wait. Oh, yeah. This one. I got it here. You didn't see the responses. Okay, and I'm gonna activate it. So my question is, what do you know about version control? Have you never heard of it, but you don't really know what it is? You know what it is, but you don't use it. Use version control sometimes, use version control for everything. Same thing as before, full.com/Josh G 964. Oh, wow. Good. That 19. Yeah, we'll give like 30 more seconds. Again, I'm not grading. It will be on the final exam. Okay, last call. Okay. Half of you have never heard of it. Great. Hopefully you learned something. Got another half, 20% who've heard of it, don't really know what it is. Great. Hopefully you learned something. A quarter of you use version control sometimes. I'm like really close to you. You know, something. I use version control for a surprisingly large amount of what I do. Okay. So, hopefully even the people in group G will learn something. Okay. So I find version control very hard to explain, but I'm going to try. Anyone ever had this experience before? Like every time I collaborate with anyone on anything, including people who use version control. So the goal of version control is to kind of address this problem, or actually it is to address this problem. Right? The problem here is that, right, we don't know what's the final version, right? So one of the things that version control does for you is it addresses makes it. So one of the things that version control does for you is that it addresses this problem. The comments are still a little bit misleading from this comic strip's not about version control, but it's a little bit misleading because it's a Word document, the doc. It's old enough that it was docx, different stories. So you can use version control for any type of file on a computer, but if you kind of lose some of the benefit for things like Word documents and stuff, and I'll explain why in a second. Really, most version control systems, the version control system that we're going to do later this afternoon get is at its best with text documents. So it's really designed for working code or other sort of text documents. And again, it's not like it's useless for Word documents. It's just you lose some of it. So version control lets you do things like track changes over time to, again, whatever you're working on, but code. It gives you a backup. It lets you rewind so you can go back and say like, oh yeah, I made a bunch of changes, but really I realized I broke something and I need to go back to the version from last Thursday. You can do that. It lets you do something called branching, which is again a little bit complicated, but like let's say I'm, I've got my analysis or I've got some program, whatever, and I got it working, but I want to try out this new feature. I want to try like a different way of doing analysis or whatever. I can do what's called branching, and I can sort of like go off on a little bit of a tangent. And if it works, then I can sort of shift to that. But if it doesn't work, I can just shift back to my previous brand. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it allows you to sort of experiment without, well, you have like a safety. It does make collaborating really easy, and it also makes it really easy to publish your analysis. And so it's a super useful tool, and I'll try. Again, it's hard to explain, and probably I haven't done a very good job explaining it yet. I will, at the end of the notes, I have pointers to a few different ways that other people have tried to explain it, probably done a better job than me. It's in some ways a little bit like Dropbox or Box, but worse. And I say worse kind of jokingly, but also kind of truthfully. It's worse in some ways, but a lot better in others. Right, so if you use Dropbox or Box, I'm sure everyone's used Dropbox, right? Like you like put your files in there, you like make changes to the files, it automatically gets synchronized. Like some server out there in the cloud, and you can share with others, right? That's great, and actually that's a lot of what version control does for you. The way in that it's kind of worse is that it makes you do some of the work, right? Dropbox, you just put the file in and like it's synchronized. It's great. I'm a Duke, so I use Box a lot. It's kind of annoying and takes like 5 hours for stuff to synchronize, but so version control, you have to do the work. It's not automatic. So like I make a change and then I have to say like, oh, okay, I have to tell Git, oh, okay, I made a change. And then if I want it to synchronize with the cloud, I gotta say, okay, now I want you to synchronize with the cloud. And so now everyone who's like, oh yeah, version control, that sounds good. Now you're saying like, you're really stupid. Why would I bother? Like, I'm just using Box or Dropbox, whatever. But part of that process is that that automatic syncing, it doesn't require a human to do anything, but it doesn't require a human to do anything. So there can be problems like, for example, well, we can go back to that manuscript example, right? And so like, I'm working on the manuscript and I like write some bit and I'm like, yeah, no, I want to do this. So I make a change. And like, yeah, but now I need to update the figures. Then I go and update the figure. And the figures, of course, like in another like PDF or something, right? So I update that. And so those changes, right? So now I'm on like version 5 of my figure and I'm on version 93 of my manuscript. And so then I, 3 weeks later, I've like changed a bunch of stuff. I'm like, yeah, no, I think I want to go back to version 93 of the manuscript. Which version? I'm on version 7 of the figure now. Which version matched this version 93 of the manuscript? I don't know. So like Dropbox keeps like versions of stuff, but it doesn't have any connection between any of the different versions, the different documents in a directory. But the version control system is very careful to like keep all the, all the changes that you make together stay together. And that's important because, let's say like my example of, I add some new feature to my analysis, right? If I try to run it on, let's say I've got my code, right, that does the analysis, and I've got like another script that runs the code. And then, but I change how I run it. I got to keep those files synchronized because I don't want to like do the new thing, new version. Well, just like with my manuscript and my figure, right? That I can get version mismatched. And so version control is very good at kind of keeping those things together. But again, it's really, it sounds super stupid compared to Dropbox, but really it has a lot of benefits, and hopefully we'll convince you of that, both today and over the next, few weeks. And I think maybe the best way to understand it is to do it, which we're gonna do a little bit later. And just to show you like one small example. So this is actually, this whole slideshow, I told you about our markdown a minute ago, so all these slides, I made this slideshow in our markdown. So another like pet trick that you can do with our markdown is slide. And so this is like old now at some point, but this is showing you some changes that I made at one point when I was editing the slideshow. And I should go back over there. Over here. So the red is the old version. It's showing you kind of pairs of chunks of the file. So green is the current version. That's like a change that I made. Red is the old version. So the line used to say archiving other data types. Now I just changed it to say other data types. Right? The green is the current version. Red is the old version. And so it lets you see, okay, what changes did I make? But not only that, I mean, you can do that in Word, right? Or like track changes, right? But I can go back and see like, what are the changes that I made like last Tuesday? And if I want to, I can switch back to those changes, or I can switch back to some of them. So it's hard to explain. Hopefully, I'll explain it better. So there are a whole bunch of different version control systems. I'm not mentioning ones that I was using like years ago when I was in grad school. I think the two most popular these days are Git and Mercurial. And Mercurial is like far distant second. So we're going to be talking about Git, because that's something that everyone uses these days. One of the nice things about using it isn't always a good idea to use something just because everyone else uses it. But at least with software, when everyone else uses it, there's a pretty good support base. So you can Google like Git and help I did X, or help I need to do X, and you'll find a bunch of people explaining, well, a bunch of people arguing about like the best way to do X, and no, that person who said you should do X this way is wrong, and they deserve to be, beaten or something. But you can find explanations for how to do stuff. And Git is no worse really than Mercurial. People can have religious arguments about which is best, but it's a perfectly fine version control system. So I mentioned somewhere here that you can collaborate and publish. So to do that, you want to use what's called a remote repository. And these are just a few different, so GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab are all kind of competitors in this space. There's one point when I gave this lecture that Microsoft just bought GitHub, so it was all in the news and everyone knew what GitHub was. That's just like, I think everyone's forgotten, right? So people use GitHub. You'll see it in a bit. So Duke has a internal instance of GitLab, which is nice because, so all of them have like free versions, but of course they want to make money, so you got to pay to get some of the features. Duke has a internal instance of GitLab that's free and kind of does most of like what you want to do. For the most part, we're actually going to do, well, if we get to it as part of the Git demo. We use GitHub a little bit. But you can kind of do, they all sort of do the same. And they're sort of the Dropbox version of like having stuff in the cloud. You actually don't need any of these to use Git, but you do lose some of the benefits. So is the version control totally crystal clear? Well, again, we're going to do some hands-on version control stuff. I'm going to talk very briefly about organization. So I like to organize things where I have raw data in one place and I make it read only. I've talked about that already. I don't like to mix code or output with raw data. And there are a couple reasons for that. All of it basically boils down to I don't trust me. Boils down workarounds for not trusting me. But it makes it really easy to, if you keep the raw data separately, then it's easy to kind of clean up because you can just, your code is all under version control, so there's a copy of it in the cloud somewhere, so you can delete all the code if you want to download it again. The output, if you've done things reproducibly, you can just run, if you have the raw data and you have the code in the computing environment, the output's totally disposable because you can regenerate it. It might take 6 hours or a week to run on a computer, but I don't care how long this computer. I'm not paying for the electricity. I know that's wasteful. But at least from a scientific perspective, it's nice to actually be able to delete everything, download it again, and run it, and that makes you. It actually helps you notice problems that we thought that. I thought that I had everything in code and it worked, but actually I forgot this little bit that I did by now. So it'll have it. Organizing things so we have all these pieces in somewhat separate places makes it a little bit easier to confirm that you can do this. Here are links. We're not going to go into them, but you can look at them from the notes. To different, somewhat more complex suggestions for organizing projects. And then here are links to hopefully somewhat better discussions of like benefits of version control. I think actually I'll link somewhere. Then I lost it. That's not everything. Anyway. Maybe better explanations for version control and using Git and some things like source tree, which is a GUI for using Git. And then here are a couple of articles that were, I think they're both from PLOS Conservation Biology about good practices, best practices, and good enough practices for inside. I don't know if we're going to do that good enough, but try. And that's a question before we shift gears to get. And then we'll take a break, like, yeah.
Does version control work for like any kind of file, like PowerPoint?
It does work for any type. Okay, so yes, in theory, it does work for any type of file. I'm going to give you a few qualifications on that. So number one, it's not good with large. It's not really good for data. Right? Version control is something that assumes that you're going to be making changes, right? Because you're tracking the changes, and so like, so one reason why it's not good for data is that at least raw data you should never change, right? You have that one version of raw data. You can process it, you don't change. It's also not good for data in the sense that it's not really designed for like huge files. And so like things like a lot of the steps that we're going to go through work on if you have like whole tons of code that might be like megabytes, 20 megabytes, but like you throw in like a gigabyte sequence file and it's going to start having problems. There are caveats that, so like for this thing, for being able to like look at your changes, that at least in Git, that only works if the files are text, right? So if you put a Word document in Git, it'll version control it, but you won't be able to do comparison using Git, right? You can do like track changes. So it does better for, it's more useful for some things than others, but you can go ahead and throw a Word document, that's fine. It's just that you're gonna have, you can even compare the two files, it's just that if you ever like looked at what's inside a Word document, not within Word, but like actually the data that underlies that, it's like this big gobble mess. And so like looking at this for that, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, question. So I'm not really familiar with GIDS, but I wonder, like, is applying a version control for everything creating problem with storaging, because you're storing every version of the. Right.
So again. Again, it depends on what you're storing. So if it's text files, Git, and this is, I think, true for kind of any at least modern version control system. It doesn't actually, what it does is it's smart about how it stores things. So it only stores changes. So you do like kind of have it, let's say you deleted a paragraph, right, from your text. It still got that in there somewhere. You don't see it, you have to like do some things to see it. So yeah, it still got that, but text doesn't really take up, text that most of us work with, right? For even for a book, it's you know, you're talking about like text or something. Again, if you're talking about big files or like for the Word document, because the changes, you might change one character in Word document and like the whole thing's like totally different. So then those are a lot of changes. So it does depend on, it can be an issue depending on what you're storing. I mean, for, for research projects that I have, you might get rid of those probably. 20 megabytes, it's not. Okay, so let's shift gears. So here's what I want you to do. So we are going to be using this open on-demand system. Everyone should have access. What am I going to do? I'm gonna put this. Ignore me for just 10 seconds. Okay. So I want you to go. Well, the easiest way might, so I set out actually instructions like last week about how to get there. So hopefully everyone's tried it, but if not, that's okay. So you want to go to this, and people see that. You can ignore this part. You want to go to dcc-on-demand-01.oit.duke.edu. Does anyone need me to make that bigger? When you go there, it should ask you for your net ID and your password. And once you put those in, you should end up here. Anyone not here? Last chance. Not here? Okay. So click on this little thingy, which might, I think it might say my interactive sessions, how big the window is. And then you should see something like this. I will say that for all the other workshops, we're going to be using this system. So you're going to become very familiar with it. And the other thing, actually, I'm going to do something else while we're waiting. So next, you want to click on this CHSI RStudio workshop. And that's going to show you this, say CHSI RStudio workshop version, whatever. You should not need to make any changes here. You should scroll to the bottom And you click on the blue launch. Anyone not scrolled at the bottom, that's the blue launch button right there. Okay, I'm clicking on it. Okay, and so when you watch here, it's going to say your session is currently starting. These people just take a minute. And that was actually quite quick. And so within, I say a minute, you should get here a button that says connect to our studio server. Anyone not got that? Cool. So I'm going to click on that connect to our studio server. So if you've ever used our studio before, we're running our studio. We're just running it on a really big cluster with like hundreds of computers in it instead of local. There are lots of benefits to that, including the fact that if you do something that's computationally intensive, it doesn't slow down your web browser or your email or your cat videos or anything. It's slowing down some computer that's in some data warehouse somewhere on that's their campus or something. Okay. It also has the benefits that what we're doing today, and I think most of what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks, you can probably do it if you just download our studio on the computer. But certainly for sessions in the spring where I'm going to be talking about RNA-seq and microbiomes, you're going to have a really hard time installing the software that you need. I will actually say that everything we're doing is in a container. We're kind of this system. So everything we're doing is in a container running on the G compute cluster. This open on-demand system that we just logged into kind of hides some of those details for you. But you know, maybe hopefully it will. You'll appreciate that it's actually nice that we have like all the software installed. And actually, I'm not going to show you today, but you can download this container and you can, in theory, you could run on your laptop. We recommend it. It's kind of a hassle. But you can run on your laptop. You can run it on any other computer that has. We're going to ignore all that for now. And here's I'm just going to look a little different. It'll look like that. Okay. So the other thing I'm going to tell you is that I am simple-minded. And so I'm going to work from my notes, which are, you don't need to look at my notes. You can look at my notes if you want. I'm going to look at my notes and you can just pay attention to what I do. My notes are here, data science workshop, get introduction. Okay. Oh, that's where I have it. So I'm gonna hide this down here. So that I can make sure not to miss anything. Hopefully, I do have a link here. And I don't know if I have a link for our version control facility data analyst, which talks about even if you're not collaborating with other people and trying to share your work, still use Git. I have a lot of things that I work on just myself, and I still use Git. You're going to get a tour of our studio next week. I'm going to show you the Git parts, or the parts that we need to know to use Git. Okay, I already told you a little bit about one reason why we're using Git is because it's popular. I told you that popular is one way to use software, but there are benefits. Okay, we're going to take a break and as soon as I finish this thought. It is super powerful. Git is super powerful. So a lot of software is developed using Git. So if you've heard of Linux, Linux was actually, Git was developed for the people who actually developed Linux. It was developed by the people who developed Linux. They wanted a better version control than what was available. So that's a project that people have been working on for 30 years now, 20, 30, something like that, 30. And you can imagine these are some pretty like smart software developers. So I tell you this not to wow you, but to say that if there's a feature of version control that any of us in this room need, almost certainly Git provides it, because they're doing way more sophisticated stuff on a project where there are 1,000 developers. Then I think, I don't want to be too presumptive, but probably anyone that's room, including myself. All our needs are going to be satisfied by it. Yeah. So Git is distributed. What that means is it makes me really happy because when I first started using version control, there were no distributed version control systems. But really what it means is that I can have what's called a repo, that's sort of like central organizing principle of Git. And I can have it running, I can have a repo on my local laptop here. I can have a copy of that repo on the GPP cluster. I can have a copy of that repo on GitLab or GitHub. And all those repos can kind of like work independently. I don't need to be, I can be on an island somewhere without any internet connection. And I can work on my repo and do just fine. The only thing I'm missing out on is being able to like, without the internet connection, is be able to like share it. Old version of version control, you actually had to be on the internet to be able to like basically use most of the features, which nowadays people like, oh, well, but like when I was in grad school and we didn't have distributed version control systems, like the internet was not quite so omnipresent. You don't care. That's it is free and open source, so that's nice. Not that like it wouldn't be worth paying for, but it's nice that you can install Git on like any of your computers here. I have instructions somewhere. Oh, yeah. Back in the slides, there's like instructions how to install Git on basically any computer. I can't remember it. So I have Git installed on my laptop. I don't remember if it comes on Mac or if you have to install it. Mac to install it. Okay. So those are all reasons for using Git. But the most important reason is that's what we're talking about there. And so it's now 3:04. We'll say like I'm gonna say 5 minutes because when people went and got coffee last time, I'm not looking at anyone, but like or like so let's aim for 5 minutes. I will show people. Does anyone need me to show you where the bathrooms are? Or everyone already found it? Now? Okay. Does anyone want to see where the vending machines for the coffee pots are? Again, do not burn down the building or cause any fires. Anyone want to see where the are? That's good. Okay. So, yeah. Be back in my. Oh, actually, so one thing, maybe there's a very slim chance that we'll get to using GitHub. So if you want to, yep.
But yeah, she wants to be a very positive area.
Yeah. Actually, that's
I'm just like.
I ran out of power.
She wants to. She doesn't want to marry. So she wants to be ready, but I'm not.
I've had one.
Yeah. Or, yeah, for like. But I guess. But it would have. Although, yeah, Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just.
You know what? That's a lot.
They don't have sirens, they don't have any.
Yeah, but it's not.
I checked my phone, but I have- that's why I was like,
Everything has our studio, right? It would not have. Okay. So you need to follow along. Okay, so you need to go to tools. If I go too fast, oh wait, okay, I'm gonna put a timer because I'm absolutely positive they're required to show you something before you leave today. Or if you ever speak to me next week, just gonna tell me properly. Okay, so go to tools and click on that. And you want to go all the way down here to global options. And click on that. Leave it out there. Okay. And that will open this window here, and I'm going to, what am I looking for? Here, git/fbn. And the important thing is Up here at the top, we have a check next to enable version control interface for our studio projects. If you don't have a check there. If it looks like this, oh. uh-oh. You want to be sure there's a check there. And I guess maybe I'll restart our studio. Anyone not there? And I'm going to scroll to the bottom here and say, okay. And let's just restart our studio just in case. Go to session and restart our. And we'll know if that worked because we are going to make a new project. Anyone not? Didn't get through all that. Okay. So we're going to make a new project, and there are a couple of ways to do that. I'm going to go under file, new project. And I'm going to click on that. That's going to make this new project wizard pop up. And I want new directory. Wait, are my instructions wrong? My instructions are wrong. New project. And then it's going to ask me for the directory name, and you want to type planets. And I'm going to actually get this. I got to browse. So I'm going to click on home here. I think for everyone else, it should. You should just have a tilde here. Anyone not have a tilde there? Little squiggly thing. Yeah, was that yes? Some people do not have a tilde. Okay. And the most important thing is you should have this create a Git repository. And you want to check that. So anyone not here? Yeah. Okay, Francis is going to solve all your problems. Anyone else?
You show again what you did for
Yeah.
the
So
global.
what did get flash
Yep.
into?
Yeah.
Look at your good.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
nice. So
Always just
That's okay.
suggestion, don't, if I say like, are you with me? Like, stop me there because otherwise you're gonna get lost later. Okay, so you wanna go to tools and then global options. And in the side panel here, you want git/svm,
You can just name it minutes.
and you want to be sure here at the top, enable version control interface for our studio projects. There should be a check there, and if there isn't, click on it so that there's a check. Everyone else good? Click on OK. And just in case, you might want to restart R, so click on session
Put it in this
and restart R.
directory for now.
I don't know if you need to or not, but. Okay, so now, if you didn't create a project before, you
Okay,
want to go to file,
here's what. Do you have the instructions?
new project. And
Yeah.
new directory. New project. Again. And then you should see creative Git repository option here. Again, I'm going to name them directory planets.
Okay.
And if you have something here, if you just have a tilde there, good. If you don't, then I'm going to do this, browse, click on home, and then choose. Okay, anyone not here? So then I'm gonna click on create project. There's a little bit of magic that's gonna happen. So our studio, again, you're gonna get a more detailed introduction to our studio next week. But our studio has this concept of projects. And usually you want to be within a project. And so the way you know which project you're in is if you look up here in the top right corner, see it says planets, we call it planets. If it says none, you're not in a project. And in order to use Git, the easiest way to use Git, I think there might be like a hacky workaround, but the easiest way to use Git is to be within a project that has Git. So anyone not, so anyone who doesn't have planets up here is a topic. I'm gonna give a little disclaimer, which is that this, I wrote this tutorial for using Git in our studio, but I basically completely stole it from an organization, from a Git tutorial that doesn't use our studio, that was prepared by a wonderful organization called Software Carpentry. Well, I'm not going to tell you anything about software carpentry because there's teaching about software carpentry. But I really like their material for teaching, and I use it whenever I have the opportunity. And so I'm going to say thank you to Software Carpentry for having a wonderful Git tutorial. And I'm totally blaming Software Carpentry for every bad joke that is in this lesson. Because there are several and they're not my fault. I got my own bad jokes. I'll take credit for them, but these are not. Anyway, you'll see in a second. Okay, so it should say planets up here, and what do we need to do? Okay, so you'll see here several different tabs in this upper right pane. You want to click on the Git tab, and I'm gonna push this down a little bit. And you should see there this two things, .git ignore and planets.rproj. And then you should see some yellow or orange question marks there. So for the moment, so the orange question mark, so these are two files that are now in our directory. You can see those here, also in that file pane. Those were put there by our studio when we made the project. We'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. Well, we're not going to talk about them. About our project, we'll talk a little bit more about the getting more in a minute. We are, for the case of this example, we're going to actually make those part of our Git repository. And I'm going to show you how in a second, but I want you to start to understand what Git is telling us. So these orange question marks are Git saying, hey, I see you got some files there in this repository, and you haven't told me anything about them. So they're not my problem until you tell me about them. But I see that they're there, and I want you to know that I see that they're there, and they're not my problem. So our response is, okay, Git, you smart aleck, now we're going to make them your problem. So the way we make them Git's problem is we click on these boxes here under where it says staged. Now we'll get a checkbox. A checkbox there, and then those orange question marks are going to a green A. So the green A, the orange question marks next, like see the file, not my problem. The green A, the A is short for added. It can also mean staged. That's why the checkbox under staged instead of that. So adding files or adding changes to a Git repository is a two-step process. The first step is the staging process, and then the next step is what's called committing. And I'll explain. I should explain it. I forgot my explanation. Yeah, so let's do this, and then I'll give you my explanation. Francis, make sure I give my explanation. Okay, So I told you before that Git is kind of like a stupid version of Git, Dropbox, and here we're gonna see kind of why, which is that we have this, well, we already saw part of it, right? We actually have to click and stage them. So the next, this two-stage process, or the two-part process, staging, the next part is committing. So to commit, we can click on this commit button. And that is going to open up a dialog box for us. And here's where we get to see, here are the files that have been changed. And this is showing us the changes. Remember, green means the new stuff. So these files are new, so everything is changed, right? Because the previous version of the file is non-existent. Right, so that's what all the contents that planets that our project, that's all the contents that are not getting. And so the other thing that Git makes us do that's stupider than Dropbox, and I use stupider, in quotes, is that now we have to type a commit message. And there's a reason for that, which is that we want to explain to all those people who might be looking at this later, including ourselves in the future, what changes we made. And so a bad version of a commit message is like, if you say, basically repeat what the change is, it shouldn't be repeating what the change is, because as you'll see, we can actually see, we can go back and see what the change is. We want an explanation for the change. And the explanation, the change could be like a single semicolon, and the explanation could be, 3 paragraphs. But it should explain. And so after I say, and so a good commit message is actually pretty important, because and I can tell you, again, I do this all the time. I'll go back and say like, hey, I remember, like, oh, I'm having this bug, right? I'm having this problem. I remember having this problem before. Oh, that other project. I don't remember how to fix it, but if I go to the other project, I can find where I fixed it. And I can see what change I made. And then I can make it here. And if I have a decent commit message, I can look through all the commit messages and say like, that's my commit message is fixed bug X. And so like, it's gonna be really obvious for me to scroll through and find that, and then I can see, okay, what changed then. So you want to be thinking about you in 6 months when you come up with commit. And after all that, I'm going to say that the commit message we're going to say here is first commit, because it's our first commit, and we're doing like, we could say like add the get ignore file, but like that's pretty obvious. So I think that's a reasonable commit message. And then what we do is we click commit. And that worked for me, but did everyone else get an error message? Did anyone else get an error message? One got an error message? Doesn't have this?
That's not what I have, but I don't know if it's an error message.
Yeah.
Well, did you get a message that says something like, something about,
Something about email.
yeah,
At the bottom.
yeah, we'll call that an error message.
Oh.
Okay, so, so I use Git all the time, so I've already, you have to, the first time you use Git on a computer, you have to configure it. I obviously used Git here before, and so I do not need to, but I'll show you how to do it. Here is one example. We're actually going to need to use the terminal. So if you're going to want to go back here and click on terminal, if you don't have that, here, there. Actually, does everyone have the terminal tab here? Do I need to share it? Have it? They would not have it. Great. Okay. So you need to type git config --, Google user dot email, and then you want double quotes, and here I'm going to put my email address. You should put your email address. Don't put mine. And then we want to end that with another double quote. Hit enter. And it will not say anything, which is exactly what. Everyone get, anyone have like any sort of error after doing that? Good, okay, so now I'm gonna teach you another little trick. We're gonna do something very similar. If you hit the up arrow key, then it'll show you what you just wrote. And we're gonna make some changes. So you want git config -- global. Instead of use your email, I'm using the arrow keys to move back and forth here. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm gonna delete email and type in name. And then I'm gonna go over here. Right. Delete. I'm gonna put in my name. You should put in your name, not my name. You can retype everything if you want, but. Anyone not get that? And you should hit enter. Like, actually, we can check. Let me do it again. If you type git config -- this. It should say now username, and it should have your username, user email, and it should have your email. Some of these other things might be a little different, but you should, well, your username and your email should be yours, not mine, but you might not see the next stuff. But you should have these two buttons. You do git config -- this. Anyone not get that? Anyone not ready for, yep. Again. You need a space after.
Down here, so it should be fine. Yes, baby. I never met the guy. I don't know what it is.
You need to.
Yeah. Number of times she got the parentheses or something. Ew, not there tonight. You're stupid. You're stupid. Yeah. Okay. Okay, then I'll just put it maybe. It's it's big. And it's big. Yeah. Signing with your email, so I don't know that.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that you need a space between git and config, and another space between config and the -- global, and then space here, and a space here. Spaces mean stuff. We're using what's called bash. I'm not going to tell you anything more about that right now, but spaces actually mean something here, so. So is there anyone who doesn't, and that you get config space -- list that they're not getting? You should see username, user.name, and your name, and user.email. Anyone not have that? Raise your hand. Well, people are thinking about raising their hand. Okay. Okay, So now that we've done that, you should be able to go back to. Well, I already did my commit. That worked. You should be able to go back here. For anyone whose commit didn't work, right, you should still see those, that, get ignore and, planets.rprod.
Yeah, I don't have it.
So your commit must have worked. Well, we can check here. Don't have that. You can, if you're in here, click on history. And if you have something here, somehow I misspell my name. Just being there. And I did it, I keep on noticing that, I think I should fix it. Well, actually, it's like, why didn't? It's really, oh, because I committed before I changed it, yeah. So last time, this time. So you have to help get that information so that people know who to blame. And I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of serious, right? It, for every commit, it keeps track, it not only keeps track of the changes, but who did it. And the commit message. And so you should, it's not showing me files. But so you, if it works before you should see something like this, but if you're, I don't know what would say for.
It used like our net ID and then some like at BCC.
That's automatically configured now. Interesting, good to know. Okay. So did it work? Did it not work for anyone? Is there anyone for whom it did not work the first time? Well, then I guess we didn't need to do that. Okay. So let's move on. So it's fine as long as like,
I did have a question. So in that case, like let's say in real life you misspelled your email or something. Is there a way to edit this now?
there is a way. So let me tell you a little bit about Git. I told you that that like these are powerful and you can do a million things with it. So I use like probably half of the power of Git. And there are things that I'll show you. Oh, that reminds me that I'm gonna pick this up so I remember. Just to do my Git explanation because Francis didn't remind me.
Remind you about what?
Now, well, we're not ready. yet.
The explanation.
Yeah.
Oh, you learned it pretty well.
So there's like, I'm gonna say 8 commands in Git that I use on a daily basis. And like, probably 4 of those I have to, let's say 6 commands I use on a daily basis. There's another like maybe 4 commands that I use maybe once a month. Those 4 commands I use once a month, I Google them, you don't really use them. And like anything else, like there are lots of other things I know that in theory you can do with Git. And I don't know how to do them, and I Google them. So things like that, yes, you can do. And no, I have no idea how to do it, but I know how to Google it. And I think I even did that before, but yeah, I don't know. So GitHub, I will tell you that. Git is pretty flexible, so people try really hard to keep you from doing stupid things, but it won't stop. So the harder it is to do something in Git, the less likely it's a good idea. So like that's the sort of thing, so that's really something that falls in that category of changing history in Git. And almost never do you want to change history, but there are a few good examples of cases where you do. So for example, people have written programs to GitHub and GitLab, you know, they're publicly. They're you can have private stuff like GitHub and GitLab. But a lot of.
Yes,
there
was something.
people have written programs that kind of search through GitHub and look for things like passwords, because people will accidentally commit passwords to GitHub. That's a case where you want to change history because you probably don't want your password to be public. So if you accidentally commit your password or some other private information to a repo, it's a reasonable thing to do to change history. But those are sort of the rare exceptions to the rule. So yeah, so almost anything you need to do in Git, you can, but many of those things about it. Other questions? Okay. Now I need to give my explanation of how Git works. And my explanation of why I'm not a professional artist. And I did this really, yeah. So this is my desk. We'll think of me as an abstract artist. How it goes. Here's a manuscript I'm working on. I'm just use an example of a manuscript, even though I said that. Well, like if it was text, that's cool. And like if I was writing my manuscript in or marked out on paper, that's okay. Here's my manuscript. And so here's what I like to do. When I've gotten to a point in writing, it could be like a sentence or a paragraph or like a page where I feel like I'm at a good stopping place. You know, maybe I'm like, I just crafted like a really beautiful sentence and I'm like really happy with it. Then what I like to do is I like to take my paper copy of the manuscript and I take it to the copy machine. It's going to look a lot like my desk because I'm an artist. People know what copy machines are, right? We still have them. They're like fax machines. It's not clear why we have them anymore, but we do. Okay, so I'm going to take it to my copy machine and I'm going to make a copy of it. And then I'm going to put it in my file cabinet. Okay, right. So it's not like every second. It's not like every character. It's at some sort of stopping place that I'm doing, right? And so then I have like, you know, because I got to a stopping place, I made a copy and I put it in my file cabinet. Then like, you know, let's say write some more. I think, you know what? I really needed like coffee because what I just wrote was garbage. I can take that, but I can like throw it out. That's the trash can, by the way. A real trash can, not the thing on your desktop. And then I can go back to my file cabinet and I can take the old version that I had that I just like, it was that beautiful sentence. It was like the last good stopping place. Right? And I just get out of the file cabinet. So now I have that nice copy, got rid of the garbage. Right? I've been okay with that so far. But see, I'm like paranoid because I'm afraid that there might be a fire in my office with a file cabinet can burn, something like that. And you laugh, but I did work in a lab one time when that had both a fire and a flood, not at the same time, but a fire and a flood. Wasn't my fault either time. At least it wasn't approved there. I didn't say that. So, but I'm paranoid because of that. And so every once in a while, I like to take the file cabinet and I like to put it in my replicator device. I'll just write replicator there. And then my replicated file cabinet. I take and I ship it off to a warehouse where I store replicated versions of my file cabinet. And I'm not going to draw any more. I've already tortured you enough with my art, but you get the idea. Replicated version of my file cabinet. So like if there's a fire and the file cabinet burns down, I can always call up the warehouse and I can say, hey, can you send me one of those old versions of the file cabinet? Now, of course, I'll lose anything that since I've replicated it, but at least I'll have everything, you know, that happened that was in my file cabinet before. Right? And so they can ship me back my file cabinet, and I have a replacement at least. Makes sense. So this is Git. So this is doing an ad for staging. Okay. And also you can't read the end of it, right? This is the commit. We'll get to the other part. Actually, but you can do all those other things. Okay, questions? Really crystal clear, right? Okay. So let's do some more, now that we hopefully get the concept. Let's actually use this, right? Because so far we just connected like the random files that. Okay. I guess now I need to explain. Well, okay, I'll show you how to do it, and then I'll keep that. So we're going to make a new file. So we need to go to File, New File, and then where is it? Put it down here. Oh boy. There. Okay, so we're looking for text file. Anyone not here? Okay, it's never checked it out. So now this is going to pop up the pane here. It's called the source pane. And so what we are going to type here is hold and drive, but everything is my favorite color. I will very quickly explain that here we're getting to the bad joke zone, and the whole like concept of this lesson is that some classic movie monsters, Dracula, the Mummy, werewolf, so they're like trying to figure out what planet they want to have their base on. And so they're like they're doing research. Okay, so this is our notes on Mars. So we're going to save it. You can click on the little floppy disk here. I'm sure everyone knows what a floppy disk is, right? Good. Okay, that'll open the file save dialog here. And I'm going to call that mars.txt. And I'm going to click save. We're not here. Okay. So now we see mars.txt here. We got our orange question marks, which mean what?
It's not its problem.
Not its problem. Yeah, exactly. It's our problem until we make it its problem. So let's make it its problem. Let's see. We're going to click the checkbox. And we are going to click on commit. And we're going to make a commit message. You'll see, oh yeah, I don't like that. I forgot to have it in mind. Hit enter. I used to keyboard shortcut, but I could have just done. Block this there. Or you can go down, file and save. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go open the commit window. So now actually we have a, well, that's because I changed it. So you can see the changes, right? Which is just it's a new file. And my commit message is going to be start notes on Mars as a base. You see, I'm not repeating what I said. I'm explaining what I did. Explaining what the changes are. And now I click commit. And if you want to, so Git is actually usually pretty helpful, except when you do a commit. The Git is usually helpful in the messages it gives you, except when you give a commit, it gives you sort of confusing bits of messages that, like, as long as it doesn't say error or something, you're fine. Close, and we can go back to the history pane and we can see, well, there I spelled my name right. Awesome. And it's got the commit message there. It's got my name and my email address. There's the old commit, and I can click on that and that's actually acting fine. All right. I don't know why it's not showing the old commits, but normally it does. Okay. And now I can change with that. Everyone good with that? Okay, so now, so far we've been working with new files. Now we're gonna edit an existing file.
I didn't get to.
So we're gonna say the two moons may be a problem for man. Line. I'm going to save that. And now, so now we see something new. We see an M, a blue M, which means modified. And so we can click on commit here, open our commit pane. And we're going to add our commit message, add concerns, note, Mars's moves on the planet. So again, you'll notice that I'm describing the change, I'm not repeating it. And then I hit commit. And if you notice, now I'm getting an error message. What does it say? And I will say this about Git. I have many times had some sort of error message from Git, and I'll like spend 10 minutes Googling it and reading it. And then I find what the solution is, and I get back to the error message and I think, oh, yeah, it told me that. I didn't need to spend 10 minutes. So what does it say? Changes not staged for commit. No changes added to commit, right? I have to stage before I can commit. And this time, I forgot to, I didn't stage it, didn't click the stage button. So it's telling me you can't do a commit without staging first. Like if I'd staged some files, that would have been okay. So I'm going to click on the stage button there. And so now that, I don't know if you noticed this, but when I click on the stage, the M moves from the right column to the left column. It's a little subtle. But you can see the stage button clicked here too, or the checkbox. So now I should be able to commit. And now I'm not getting any error message. And now I don't see anything new there. Yep.
Okay, so you just were saying like there's no time you would commit without staging.
Well, you can't. Well, you can't. You have to stage something in order to. Git will not make you do what you call an empty commit.
Sure. Is there a method stage when committing?
Yes, good question. So that's actually why it's a two-step process. So I'll give you an example of that. So when I told you before about a case where you might like change multiple files. So like, for example, if you're adding a new feature, you're fixing a bug, you might make a change in one file. And like, you're like, okay, that works. But now I need to make changes in 3 other files. So you might stage that one change. You don't have to, but you might stage that first change. And then make the other change in another file, stage that, and then make another change in another file, stage that. And then you have all those changes kind of, again, as a cohesive whole. You can even do, if you're kind of lazy, which I sometimes am, and you make what ends up being kind of like 2 sets of changes. Like you maybe like you fix something, but then you start changing something else. You can stage lines or several lines that have been changed without, maybe you made changes in 10 places in a file. You can stage 3 of those changes. I'm not going to get it. Maybe I'll get into it. We're running out of time, so but yeah. So definitely, and that's a big part of the process of this process. Right? And on the flip side, you can you might have made changes in 10 files. You might only want to stage changes in 3 different, right? And so the staging lets you you can stage them, commit, and then like, sometimes I'll like I said, sometimes with this is actually 3 different commits here. And so I'll stage some of the changes, I'll commit those, and then I'll stage the next set of changes. And I haven't like done anything else, I just realized that, I can't really, when I think about what commit message I would write, I'm like, well, this is actually like 3 different things that I could write like, 5 words about one commit. I could write 5 words about another commit. I could write 5 words about a third, right? So it's sort of. Yeah. There's another.
Cool.
Yeah, can you use Git on anything other than a text file? Like, can you use it for a script file or?
So yes, you can use Git on any file, any type of file, but you don't get, like, if you used a Word file here, then, and you said script file, so like, R, Python, all those things are basically text. And so it works great for any sort of programming language. The caveat is that, I mean, you can work it on any, you can use it on anything. The caveat is that if you, if it's like a Word document or like web page or something like that, this sort of where you can see the changes, it doesn't work. The changes aren't really, because it sort of looks like just double.
Can you give a short demo about creating 2 notifications, but only stage 1?
I might have one in a minute. And actually, I'm going to. Okay. So we did our staging. Okay, so let's add another line. Well, so we're gonna save that. And now I'm gonna do a commit name.
Where you are.
And so I want to point out something else that I didn't point out before, which is you see there's actually here this it's called the radio button. It next to unstaged selection. And I can flip over to staged and there's nothing staged. So this is showing us the unstaged changes and this is showing us the staged. When I click on stage, you'll notice that it's going to automatically flip over because now these changes are staged. So if I click on unstaged, there's nothing there. This comes in handy in cases where you stage some things without others. And I'm going to add a commit message. Concern about Martha, climate, or
Yeah, like so that's another line that we've done. So you can save that.
just look again at the history and we can see, okay, now those are all our changes.
See now it's stages. And we can commit.
Okay,
And then commit, yeah.
so let me,
And then you have the commit message. That says. Adding.
actually,
I think it's
I'm gonna, if anyone got a problem if we run like 2 minutes late. Okay, so I'm gonna show you what I promised to show you, which is for next week, we can come back to this for people who can stay a little bit longer. And I will say that all my notes I'm just going through my notes, so you can walk through, reading it as far as I would like, that's okay. But I'm gonna show you how to do what's called cloning the repository for the workshop. So this is what. This is what.
Yeah. The regular element page is never thought.
Oh, so close. This is called flow. So now I, in my example, I'm like requesting a file cabinet back from the warehouse I sent there. But I can also request a file cabinet that someone else, and that's what I'm actually doing right now. And I will say that there are instructions, let's see. If you go back to the main repository, here, so this is, I think I said at the beginning, but this is the GitLab repository for the remote repository on GitLab for the whole workshop series. All the material will ultimately be here. Here are on this main page, the bit.ly link is there. If you scroll down to the bottom, the workshop content, initial download of workshop content, click on that. That's what I'm going to show you right now. But you don't need to follow this because you can listen to it. Okay, so I do need everyone to go here. Again, you can go to that bit.ly link if you want. Anyone not here? You know, on the screen. Otherwise, I can keep going. Okay. So, I'm going to check my notes. Okay, so the way. So see this blue clone button here? You're going to want to click on it. And that'll pop up a little dialog box here. You want to, there are two things where you can, there are little clipboards. You want to go to the clipboard next to see it says clone with HTTPS. You want to click on this little clipboard next to that. And that will copy a URL. Anyone need me to do that again? Yeah. Do it again. So go to click on clone. Next to clone with HTTPS. Copy URL. They would not have that. Also, if you go to here, we got a link to it. Okay. So now we're going to go back to our studio. And we want to go to, and we'll do it different way. So if you click on the planets here, you can do new project. This is the same way that we made the planets project, just different. When it's some file menu before. And anyone not have the new project listed? You don't have it? Just try it again. I think you get that when there's like something funny on the network. Oh. Try to. Try to try to just reload the page. Yeah. Yeah, it's still there. You might have. Maybe you're using that one. Probably there. Well, I'll try. Yep, yep. They don't make them. Okay, anyone else not there? I should mention that this happens to me all the time. If you get some sort of warning, like couldn't connect to something or other, often the problem is that if you notice here, we have a limited amount of time, and we can actually change it, but by default, since these sessions are 4 hours, we do for 3 hours, we do 3 hours. So when this runs out, our studio shuts down, and so you need to like go through the process again of starting up the our studio section. So anytime something funny goes on, that's a good place to check. Okay, so now you want to click on version control. And you want to click on Git. And you want to now paste what we copied from GitHub. So on a Mac, we can do Command V. On a PC, we should be able to do Control V. Cute little trick. If you kind of click your mouse anywhere here and you hit the Control button or the Command button, it'll just copy the name of the project here, which is usually what you want to do. You can change, you can call it whatever you want. And normally I'll keep the same project name as whatever it is on GitLab. And we can, if you have tilde there, that's probably a good thing. That's going to be in your home directory. For now, I have a little bit of a different organizational structure, but for this, that's probably a good thing. Okay, so anyone not have this? You don't have it?
Nope.
I'm sending Francis over there.
It's fine. All good.
Anyone else? Okay, and so then the last thing we need to do is click on create project.
So did you create it?
And so that is going to download, it's gonna do this, and you just clone, and it's making a new project. And so now you'll see up here in the top right hand corner, it says 2022-2023 HIV workshop. So this is all the workshop material thus far. For next week, whoever's the instructor next week, and I can't remember who, gonna add some stuff between now and then, or maybe they've already added it, I'm not sure. And we have there's a mechanism, I can show you right now, for downloading those changes. You go back to the Git pane, and you click on this down arrow, that's a Git pull, which is, well, it's kind of this too. This
Yeah.
is what's called push.
Yeah, see all these things are in this, you can pull this.
And the one other thing I'll tell you, and probably will tell you next week, is if you want to edit something that's in here, I'll give you an example. We'll look at, you don't need to do this, but so if, say, you want to edit my lecture, so you want to take notes, if you make changes, then it could create problems when we do the quick full update. So the safest thing to do is, check. Actually, I have it in the notes here. Here, in this bit here that was linked from here, the I don't think workshop content. Yeah. I know. This one. It's got a couple different ways to deal with it. If you change the name to, so if you make some changes. If I save those changes, they're going to show up here. I don't want that. Because that can create problems. I revert that. I'm just doing. like throwing in the trash. So now I'm gonna make some changes and I'm gonna save it to a file. I'm gonna do save as. I'm gonna add mine at the end. If I save that, it will ignore that file. So you see it's not showing up here. And then you won't have to worry about when you do updates, when you get full, it won't be a problem. You'll have your, like, if you want to take notes on our. There are a couple other solutions that I discussed in that. Question. Yeah,
We said next week's lecture will likely add things to the project. So what we cloned will be out of date at that point, right?
Yep.
Okay, so then.
and so then, and hopefully every week, the instructor will remember to tell you. But just so you know, you can update just by clicking on this here, just make it big enough that it says bold.
Or you can read it wherever you want.
Yeah. And here it's saying already up to date, so that's because we just did the clone. But if there are changes and you do a poll, it'll like show a bunch of stuff, and as long as it doesn't give you an error message, you're up to date with whatever's on the.
Yeah, actually.
Other questions?
Here, and then rename.
So we did not cover everything about Git.
Good.
Well, we definitely didn't cover everything about Git. We didn't cover quite as much material as I wanted to, but hopefully I gave you a taste of
Yeah.
what Git does and links to like this. So you can keep going through the lesson if you want.
Okay, wow.
We could potentially at the end of this series,
So if you have anything that comes to underscore.
there's still plenty to talk about like, how you collaborate. We talk about that. So, well, if people are interested in the dual order and when the. But I think we're in a good spot. We know that people go, but if you have questions. Otherwise, I will not be here next week, but. You can do next week. Okay. Grant, if someone you know, will be.